All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, thank you so much for joining us for our Financing Your Education webinar session. Tonight, we're just going to be talking about how to help pay for school here at Montana State University. I do want to mention a few things before we get started. We do have some coworkers from the Office of Admissions monitoring the chat function. So chat in those questions you have. This time is really for you. It's supposed to be meant to be a resource, to get your questions answered. We have two lovely guests that are going to help get those questions answered, but we can't answer them unless you type them in and let us know what kind of questions you're thinking about. What are your concerns? We want to get those answered for you. Real quickly, to just get started, I want to introduce myself. My name is Lauren Winder. I am an admissions counselor here at Montana State. I am actually originally from Montana. I grew up in the small town of Belt, Montana. So I definitely understand kind of those fears in terms of starting college and paying for that. So I'm just really here to help you through that. I do also want to mention, if you're having any difficulties tonight, I know you must not be able to hear us if you can't hear, but I'll give some time to kind of read through this slide. Whether you can't hear the audio, there's some numbers on there that you can call. I do also just want to touch on, just for all of our students joining, the fact that we will have a recording of this presentation posted on our website tomorrow, so that even if there are any kind of last minute questions or maybe you missed something, you can jump back in and use this resource later on. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my slides, and I'm going to just pass it on off to James and kind of let him go through some questions that they may have.
Great, thank you, Lauren, and welcome everybody. Welcome to MSU. Welcome to this evening's information session. We wanted to try something a little bit different than the traditional kind of PowerPoint and taking you through some screens like we would normally do. We wanted this to really be a chance to do some question and answer and do some live kind of conversation about what you have. So we know when the invite went out that there were some very good questions submitted. We're going to respond to those as we kind of go through this session. I have Barb Sanders from the office here with me. We're going to kind of go back and forth a little bit, addressing those questions as we kind of move through the time here this evening. So even with that, as Lauren said, if you have questions or it sparks another question, please throw that in chat. We can address that as we kind of go through things or come back to those at the end. So please jump in both with the live chat as well, because we want to be as engaging as possible for you in how we kind of approach stuff. So again, my name is James Brochet. I'm the Director of Financial Aid here at MSU. And Barb, I'll let you quickly introduce yourself.
I can try to unmute you. I sent a request to unmute you, Barb.
Okay, so Barb Sanders, she's Assistant Director in the office. Oh, there you go, you're live. All right.
Yeah. I'm Barb Sanders. I'm the Assistant Director in the Office of Financial Aid. I oversee everything to do with federal loans and Pell Grants, so I have a lot of answers for questions. And sorry, I had too many screens. I couldn't get my cursor to the right screen to unmute, but now I'm good.
Okay, great. So we're going to just start off with some questions. And Lauren, if you see something in the chat and you want to just dive in, please consider doing that as we kind of move through. First part of the routine is we kind of typically think of this flow about federal financial aid and financial aid in general. So we're going to speak really about federal aid in the circle when we talk about the free application for federal student aid, which is also the FAFSA. But I want you to also understand that as we talk about those things, the same kind of cycle, the same kind of opportunity also applies to any state or institutional aid that is there. They all kind of get lumped together, even though you have a federal source, a state source, and an institutional source of financial aid. They all kind of start and are hinged on this federal application. So the one thing we want to get you to do, and there's a question in here really about a couple different things. One, is it too late to do a FAFSA? Answer to that, absolutely not. So the FAFSA is good from July 1st when it opens, and that was July of this last year, all the way through June of this upcoming year. So as a fall student, you can actually complete that FAFSA anytime really up until the last a week before the last date of a term. And if we can get that application in and we can evaluate it and we can get awards done within that week, or maybe stretching it, a week is probably stretching it, but a 2-week period, we can still apply aid for that term in that period of time. So it is definitely not too late to do the FAFSA. That is good for 1 year at a time. So this coming FAFSA, what we need to do is one that says it's for fall 21 and spring 2022. That is the annual cycle for the FAFSA that you need to do for this upcoming fall term. So there's also a good question on there about, do you have to do that every year? And the answer to that is yes. So just because you get that one time done here, what I always stress very importantly is that you do one thing, and that is October 1st. I said the cycle's good from July, but the FAFSA comes out on October 1st of every year. So up for the next coming fall. So we always like to have you put on your calendar right away as you go through this, October 1 of every year, do the FAFSA for the next year. We urge that and we stress that a lot, because as you become a student and you are October 1, you are right in the middle of a fall term as you begin your college career. And so right as you are in the middle of that first semester of financial aid, it's time to actually start thinking about financial aid and completing that FAFSA for the next year. Now, part of the confusion on why you might not think you might be able to do a FAFSA still is because we have what we call a preferential filing deadline of December 1st every year. And so that is an MSU deadline. That is not a federal deadline. So the FAFSA is still open and available for you throughout that entire period of time. MSU uses that preferential filing date to award what we call campus-specific programs. And those are programs that have limited dollars available to them. So when we reach a budget or an authorization for that particular account, we can't award anymore. So we use that preferential filing date to actually lump students into being able to be considered for programs that have not unlimited, or I should say limited eligibility for what they have. Those generally are federal programs like the Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, which we call the SCOG, and the federal and state work study programs. So in order to be considered for those, we need you to really kind of meet that preferential filing date to be considered for those particular options. However, not meeting that doesn't mean you still, or with the federal Pell Grant and the federal student loans, would be unavailable for you. So those two programs are always there up until a point of where you actually are no longer enrolled anymore. So can you still do the FAFSA? Absolutely. You have to do it every year. Yes. Get that on a calendar to kind of do each and every time and what that does. So that FAFSA becomes kind of that first trigger in terms of getting you federal, or really not just federal, but any type of financial aid. We use that information to guide all of our kind of awarding. So you might apply in October, November, December, January. We begin processing awards for that next fall sometime around late February of that next year. So that FAFSA is going to be received by Montana State University. We're going to put it into our process, and sometime in the beginning of that next year, in that spring term, you should expect to then see an award offer from us that says, based on that FAFSA information, here's what kind of financial aid that you're eligible for. Now, that process of determining your eligibility is guided primarily by the federal Department of Education through what we call the FAFSA form, and through subpart of that, which what we call kind of a needs analysis process. Now, that process, if you've done the FAFSA, great, thank you for doing that. If you haven't, what that process requires is for you to kind of get together both income information from you, the student, and from your parents' situation in terms of family living. That information can easily be just imported into the FAFSA from the IRS if you filed the previous year's tax returns. Don't have to look them up, don't have to have them at your fingertips anymore. You can just do a data retrieval on that most of the time and just have that stuff fed right in, and that application process can become pretty slick if you're eligible to use that IRS data retrieval. MSU will get that information. The Department of Education on the federal level evaluates that data and sends that back to us with some results in terms of what that calculation kind of looks like. we often get a question on that calculation that doesn't necessarily apply to my family situation. So what that calculation does in one sense is put you into a process where you get to look at what the department really says, what that analysis says your eligibility might look like. Many people ask, many parents mostly ask, is that actually apply to my situation? Because we equate that to be kind of like a dollar, but it's not really a dollar, it's more of an index. And in that index, what we're doing is comparing you with all the other people that file a FAFSA form. And in that result kind of equitably treats every family, at least in an analysis that is much the same. So while it may not be representative of the financial situation, it is equitable in the sense that it's treated everybody who's completing FAFSA in a very similar way. So in that though, if the income information that you supplied on that FAFSA form does not represent your current financial situation, we want you to get a hold of us here at the office in our contact information, and we'll supply some of that here at the end if you don't already have that. That is the one slide we probably should have had kind of up the whole time so that you can reach out to us. But with that, we can take a sense and do an evaluation of kind of what or how that situation or how that change of your fiscal situation or your parents' fiscal situation might change that overall eligibility. Not everyone can get a Pell Grant. Many students do, and when you're into that, by doing that application every year, that eligibility can also change every year. We had one question about, is that federal Pell Grant available for all 4 years? It is if in a very similar situation, you have the same kind of eligibility markers each and every year, but that Pell can change to some degree, sometimes mostly a little, sometimes a lot, depending on that fiscal data that you kind of supply on the FAFSA form. So be attentive to that, but that application comes very generally in terms of what that looks like. But every year you have to complete that application to kind of get that done. With that FAFSA form and with that analysis, we give you one offer, and that offer contains both your eligibility for the federal Pell Grant, federal student loans. It would also contain any scholarship information that we already know about. So if we've offered you a reward based on your admissions application, that should also show on that award letter and anything that's there. Depending on the timing of that, if we know of other aid that's coming for you, if you've done other scholarships or reported other scholarships or are eligible for a waiver of any kind, that information will also be represented on that award notification that you get. If it's not, don't be too alarmed by that. Always look at your MyInfo account and your award page, really, because as we receive information, that page gets updated with current information that we have. So just because you don't see it initially, or you tell us about something later, or those processes are continuing across campus or anything else, then we have that information that will kind of go along with that as we kind of move forward. Be attentive to that. That financial aid package, though, sits in terms of a cumulative piece, and we'll talk real quickly about kind of costs that are related to your college experience. So when we talk about costs, we talk about two different kinds of costs. We talk about direct expenses. As an incoming freshman, you're going to have a direct expense of tuition, of fees, and of room and board for being on campus housing. So those become direct costs for you for this coming year. Subsequent years, as we move through this process, if you choose to stay on campus, you continue to have those direct costs of room and board. However, if you move off campus, those room and board costs become indirect costs, and you pay for those out of your own pocket or with a financial aid refund or whatever that might look like. But with that, say you have a package of a federal Pell Grant and you've taken out some student loan and you have a scholarship added into that, that whole amount gets applied first to those direct costs. And when those direct costs are met, anything that's left over from that is issued to you as a student in the form of a refund, or to the parent if there's a plus loan involved, in order to be able to use for what we call indirect costs. So indirect costs are those personal expenses that you encounter every day. There are books and supply costs that are different for every student. There are transportation costs. So many of what we call indirect costs are also costs that you incur right now kind of every day. Mom and dad are already helping you pay with gas. They're helping you, they're feeding you right now. So there are other incidentals that go along with those costs. Now, financial aid is awarded to you in an amount that can cover all of that. Your job is to kind of do some assessment of that, do some budgeting, kind of figure out what that looks like and where you fall into that picture, knowing that if you're going to have a work or if you're going to meet some of those indirect costs with some other pieces, you don't have to borrow student loans to meet those kinds of expenses. They can be met with other kind of options, but those funds too, those loans are offered to you to be able to meet that global part of an expense, both direct and indirect, just in case any of that kind of applies. So be aware of that. So many students will use this to pay for their books, right? And so depending on the timing of that, and if your financial aid is on time and it pays right away before the classes start, and it pays enough to cover your direct costs of tuition and fees and room and board, then that refund is available to help you with those books and supply costs. If there isn't enough aid there, or you're making some sort of personal payments to help pay for the room and board, then you have to also cover those books and supply costs with that. So financial aid can help you with those costs, but it really kind of fluctuates on the timing and how that works and where that might go with different aspects of where you are in the financial aid flow. Say you didn't have financial aid ready, you decided to, come in and September and still hadn't done that and still need to get bill paid or still are struggling with some expenses. Again, do the FAFSA at that point in time, figure out where you are, get those awards out there, and you can still use financial aid to meet some of those other indirect costs or even some direct costs after that fact kind of goes through. So looking through some of the questions here. There's one that says, how do I know my tuition's been paid for using federal aid? Your bill is paid for by using both a combination of any federal, state, or institutional aid that you have. That all gets funneled through one piece. And as we apply that, that gets applied to your student account. So then student accounts will also then process that with the aid that's available and determine whether or not you have money that is still owed or whether or not you're due a refund. So, but that can be given. And then you get into a budgeting situation if you have a refund about how to spend those funds for the remainder of the semester. There's a couple questions that were submitted about timing of different things. You are awarded aid for a financial aid award year, so both for fall and for spring. Aid is dispersed in those increments. Aid is dispersed for the fall term, and then aid is dispersed for the spring term as we kind of go through that. With that, I know there's probably a couple other FAFSA things related there, but I know we're going to overlap a little bit. So Barb, I'm going to turn it over to you for a few minutes to talk really specifically about the PELL program and some of the questions we got about that.
Thanks, James. I'm going to pull those questions up really quick. So to be eligible for Pell Grants, you have to have what the Department of Ed qualifies as need. So it's based on the information you submit on your FAFSA from you as well as your parents' information. So like James said, you have to do the FAFSA every year. If nothing changes, you should be Pell eligible for all 4 years. You have 6 years worth of Pell Grant to use. So once you use 6 years of Pell Grant, then you're going to run out. You hit your lifetime limit at that point. So some of the questions we got: how many classes do I have to take to get Pell Grant? Pell Grant prorates based on the number of credits you're enrolled in. So if you're enrolled in 12 or more credits, which is full-time, you'll get the full amount that's awarded to you. If you're enrolled in half-time, 6 credits, you're going to get half of your Pell Grant. So it just prorates depending on how many credits you're in. It's not per class. One other question that we have, what happens if I drop a class? Depends on when you drop it. If you drop it or withdraw from that class, that gets a little bit complicated. Your Pell will adjust based on your enrollments. So if you drop a class, your Pell Grant is going to adjust. If you're still within the full-time range, it won't affect your Pell. So remember, 12 credits and up, you hit a flat spot on your bill. The same with your aid. If you're in 12 credits, you're full-time. If you're in 20 credits, you're still full-time. What's the difference between Pell and loans? We get that question often from students. The difference is Pell Grant is free money. You don't have, we don't let you turn that down. It's automatically accepted for you on your financial aid award letter. So loans is money you have to pay back. So that's going to accrue interest. You're going to be making payments once you graduate from school, if not during school. So that's the biggest difference. Pell Grant is full free money. You do not have to pay that back. So the other part of that is when you go into your award letter, a lot of the students want only the Pell Grant and not their loans. So if you log into your MyInfo to accept your award, you just have to accept the terms and conditions, look at your award letter. Your Pell's automatically accepted for you. Like I said, we don't let you turn that down. Your loans, if you don't want them, you can decline them at that page. You do not have to take loans to get Pell Grant. That's a very big misconception. We encourage students to only borrow what they need. So if you don't need to take loans to finance your education, we encourage you not to take the loans. Can I get Pell Grant in the summertime? Generally, yes. You're allowed to receive 150% of Pell Grant per year. So if you attend fall, spring, and summer, you get 50% for fall, 50% for summer, or sorry, spring, and then 50% for summer. So the easy answer to that is yes, you do have to be in 6 credits or more to receive Pell Grant for summer. That is not the case for fall and spring. You can receive Pell Grant at less than 6 credits. Why was the amount of Pell I received less than what I was offered? I kind of touched on that. If you're less than full time, that Pell Grant's going to prorate. The other question students are often confused on, Pell's awarded for the year, and the question is, does my Pell Grant pay once a year or once per semester? All of our financial aid pays per semester. You're also billed per semester. So beginning of fall, you're enrolled in classes, you're going to get a bill just for that semester. If you're living in the dorms, we're only going to bill you for 1 semester of dorm charges, and you're going to get financial aid for that 1 semester. So all of your Pell Grant and your student loans, when you accept them for the year, they're automatically going to be split in half. James, I'm not as long-winded as you. I covered pretty much all of the Pell Grant questions that we have that have been submitted so far.
Okay, thank you, Barb. And I do get long-winded, so that's part of it. So Barb mentioned that the Pell Grant is really free aid. It's grant money, nothing for you to repay. Once you have it, it's yours. It is that free gift money. So we'll move from that kind of into scholarships, which is also free money or gift money, and how that might be getting. And we can put that into a couple different buckets as well. We'll have MSU Awards that we'll talk about first. You have 2 different kinds of MSU Awards. One are just your application for admissions, and it is as admissions evaluates your application for admissions and evaluates your high school performance. They will award for you, if you're eligible, Montana MSU Premier Scholarship Award. And I see one question in there about the results of the Montana Premier Scholarship, and depending on when you applied, those results have been going out for months. So if you think something is kind of not lined up there, or think that you should have qualified for something and haven't heard, I'm going to encourage you to reach out to admissions to kind of review your file, review that application, check the criteria for the Montana Premier Award to see that you're eligible. Now, one thing of caution on that, the Montana Premier Award is a one-time award. In most cases, there are just a handful really based on your high school academic performance that are renewable, but in most cases, those are 1-year awards for what's there. Now, the Premier Award is really a placeholder. We will award you what we call a true scholarship otherwise, and that Premier will kind of go away and it'll be replaced by some other form of institutional aid to meet that kind of obligation in terms of what's there. That is automatic, though. That is done with your admissions application. In that same bucket, I'm going to take a moment here just to talk about the Hillman Scholars program. That is another specific MSU program. Some of you may have already received an invitation to that Hillman Scholars program is by invitation only, and MSU does an assessment of applications of students to MSU, and after a review of those, invite students to apply for the Hillman Scholarship Program. Now that program has generous support, not only financially, but also in academic support and in other MSU related aspects of your college degree. So you get support, not just with that fiscal aspect with a stipend and an onboarding kind of process, but you also get access to the Allen Yarnell Center for Student Success on a direct basis, their advisors, program support, really a peer colleague group that helps you kind of get through any of that. If you have questions on that, if you've been invited for that and haven't responded to that, there's still time to do that. Go to the MSU webpage, search the Hillman Scholarship Program. You're going to find some contact information there. That is not run out of the financial aid office. That is run out of the Allen Yarnell Center for Student Success. But it is a great opportunity for you to do that. So if you've got an invitation and haven't responded to it, please consider doing that. If you didn't get an invitation but think you might be eligible after looking at that webpage, please reach out to the Hillman Scholars Program and get a sense from them on what it would take to become an applicant or get an invitation for that program. Another MSU bucket of scholarships is what we call the CAT Scholarship Program. We encourage freshmen to complete this application every year, just like the FAFSA. So it is available on our website. If you just search for CAT scholarships, you're going to find a link to that application, and it allows you to apply for about 90% of the other institutional scholarships that MSU's offered. It's one application, one portal that kind of guides this whole process. It is traditionally used by academic departments to award their funds. Oftentimes, they certainly award much more to what we would call a continuing student for your second, third, and fourth year. And that's because they want to see college performance before they make some of those awards. So that doesn't mean that every scholarship in there is limited to a continuing or an upper class person. There are some still in there for incoming freshman students. And it's like any kind of scholarship mantra. You can't get it if you don't apply. So two things I always point out. One, October 1, FAFSA, put that on your calendar. That FAFSA begins and is open there on October 1st of every year. The second one is going to be CAT scholarships. Again, we can't consider your eligibility. Departments can't consider your eligibility unless you do the application. So that is due or opens November 1st of every year. So you've got two calendar items to do. One October 1, one November 1, and that CAT scholarship piece. So in that CAT scholarship application, you're going to put a bunch of your own information in. It's going to pull information in from your admissions application. It's going to talk about your major and different aspects of what you may or may not have done. And it's going to pull that information, and then it's going to feed it to whoever's responsible for that scholarship program. And that scholarship program committee or chair gets to pull in students who are eligible for that program and make a decision based on the number of students in that pool in order to make those awards for that scholarship. So again, you can't get it if you don't apply. In some pools, there are going to be upwards of 50 to 100 students that are eligible. Obviously, then your odds of getting something go down quite a bit. In other pools, depending on the specifics of that scholarship, you could have 5 to 10 people in that pool, and your chances of then getting an award go up pretty dramatically. So that happens all in the back end of the program and everything that goes with that. So those are the institutional. You get the generally a first year admissions recruitable award that we call the Premier Award that turns into another form of a scholarship. And then you get CAT scholarships to actually apply or get anything else. Sometimes the CAT scholarship process isn't in great timing with the financial awards that we give you because the departments haven't made those decisions yet. So, but right now, like they're making those decisions now in the end of spring and into summer. And hopefully you've already gotten a financial aid package. But when that offer is made to you, you have to go back into CAT scholarships. You probably have to complete what we call a thank you letter. That is something that goes back to the donor of that scholarship that says, hey, thank you. I appreciate you offering me this award. And then once you've accepted that information gets fed and would show up on your financial aid award. So Those two things kind of have to be done. There was one question about that Premier Scholarship and whether or not it can be used for anything other than tuition, and no. If you have some other form, some other waiver or anything else that might pay your tuition directly, then you get the best of those two deals. So it is a tuition only award, but we will choose the best one that it gives you the best bang for your buck. So whatever that looks. So if something else is paying beyond $1,000 Premier that you have, you're going to give you that award in place of the Premier. If you have something else that's just short of that, if that can still be applied to that tuition, then we will make room to be able to kind of get that applied to that bill. Outside scholarships. So MSU, through the Financial Education Office, hosts a couple sessions every term about what we call kind of Scholarship 101, and that's how to kind of go out and search for non-MSU scholarships. Honestly, a lot to be said here is this takes a little bit of legwork. There are searches that have to be done. There are applications that have to be done for outside scholarships. There are relationships to be made in order to gain those scholarships, but all worth the effort if you can get something that's out there. Again, many students that we've seen with some of these, I'm going to call are not what I would say the most qualified of student, but they're the ones most persistent. So it takes some persistence to get into those pools and to be kind of get out there to some of those really strange ones that might be out there in order to kind of move yourself up into what those are. Anytime you get notice of an outside scholarship that you might become eligible for, you need to let MSU know that you're going to be getting that so we can add it to your financial aid award package as a resource. So anything outside like that coming in, it has an impact on your financial aid award. So we kind of want to address that. The other question we had there is there a cutoff date for when scholarships can be submitted or apply? There's never a time when you shouldn't be applying. Most scholarship opportunities have deadlines, so you have to be conscientious about what those deadlines are, but you should always be on the lookout for what those opportunities are. The deadline to submit is really, again, kind of ties back to that FAFSA. As long as you're an enrolled student, you can submit a scholarship that you got, and it can be applied to your account or be processed through your account and then delivered as a refund to you after we get it applied and make sure that all the eligibility pieces are there. So scholarships carry that same kind of free designation. We want you to search. We're here to help you search as much as possible with different resources across campus. When you get to be a continuing student, you also want to create that relationship with your academic department, because even though 90% of those are in-CAT scholarships, sometimes they have a handful generally that they hold back for really specific designated purposes. And if you have a connection with somebody in the department, you have a chance of probably getting that. That's how the scholarships work and how they're applied. I'm going to talk real quickly just about work study, because it's the go-between between grants, scholarships, free aid, and then we have work study, which is kind of a self-help kind of piece. Loans, which we call self-help, but there's an obligation with that. We've had several questions kind of come in about the work study. So as a student, when you complete the free application for federal student aid, you mark a box that says that you're interested in a work study program. And then if you've checked that box and you meet the preferential filing deadline and the need factors that go along with awarding a work study, we will award you an offer of financial work study. That will come either from a federal work study program or from a Montana work study program. We have two pots of work study, both a federal one and a state one. So we'll award you out of either one of those. What does a work study program do? It allows you the opportunity to work a campus job. More likely, there are a handful of community service jobs off campus, but more ideally, what you're doing is finding a job on campus through a department, through an academic service, through a facility service, could be the food services option, could be in a dining hall, could be with an academic department like or another department like financial aid. Sometimes we have work study students working for us. So it can be anywhere across campus, and it allows you to kind of earn money in a part-time job that puts money in your pocket, that as every payday puts money back to you to use for some of those indirect expenses that we talked about earlier. So it does not get applied directly to your bill. If you're on a payment plan, you can use it to pay part of that payment plan, but otherwise it's delivered to you just like any other job. The benefit to MSU and to you in a work-study program is that the work-study program actually pays 70% of your wage, and the department has to pay only 30% of your wage. So it's attractive to me as an employer because out of the budget that I have, I could hire 2 students and get the same benefit out of 2 students if I was paying them 100% with work study. Or I mean, if I didn't have work study, I could probably only hire 1 student. With work study, I can consider hiring multiple students to help us in our office and any place that goes. So that's how that works. But again, that's money that's getting put back into your pocket as you go. The offer of work study is contingent upon you finding a job. So as you look for that job across campus, if you have trouble finding a job, we're here to help you. There are different things that go along with that. There's a employment tool on campus called Hire a Bobcat. That contains both jobs for on-campus jobs, and it also is a job board for positions offsite of campus. So just because you don't have work study does not mean you can't find employment within the community. There are jobs here. I know there was a question submitted about finding an employer. The Hire a Bobcat is here to kind of help you navigate how that works as well. Both the Financial Aid Office and the Allen Yarnell Center for Student Success can kind of assist with some of those job opportunities and help you find a job that gets managed and directed to that as you kind of work through that process. Either one of those still is just a job, just like any other regular paycheck, puts money in your pocket and you get to kind of move through with that. If you end up not using it, that's okay. If you decide that wasn't an option you want to do, you can decline that. If you don't use all of the allocation that was provided for you, that's okay as well. Depending on your financial aid package, that may move some of that eligibility around if you do that. So we would like you to get in contact with us so we can kind of discuss how that looks. And we'll kind of go from there. With that, Barb, I'm going to turn it over to you for the student loans.
Thanks, James. We have lots of questions on student loans. So I'm going to go over kind of a lot of general information and I'll answer the specific questions that were sent in tonight. When you receive a financial aid award letter, what you can expect to see, you may or may not see Pell Grant. We talked about that. Every student's going to be awarded student loans. So the maximum amount you'll receive as an incoming freshman is $5,500 for the year. And that can be all in federal direct unsubsidized loan or a combination of subsidized and unsubsidized together. So the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized, with a subsidized loan, the government's paying your interest as long as you're enrolled in 6 or more credits. So no interest is accruing until after you drop below 6 credits or you graduate. Unsubsidized loans, the interest starts accruing from the time of disbursement. However, you do not have to make payments on that loan until 6 months after you graduate or drop below 6 credits. So no payments, but if you have the ability to make payments and just pay that interest every month, that's certainly going to reduce your debt once you graduate from MSU. So 2 types of loans, subsidized and unsubsidized. $5,500 is the maximum for an incoming freshman. From there, we award to fill that gap between your cost of attendance and all your other aids, so scholarships, work study, Pell Grants. We'll take all of that, anything to fill that gap between your financial aid and your cost of attendance, we're going to award a Parent Plus loan. So this is a little bit different. This is a loan for your parents to take out to help finance your education. They are not required to take it out, just as you're not required to take student loans. They're not required to take parent loans. It's an offer for them if they should need that additional assistance to help finance your education. So different from the student loans, the parent loan requires a credit check. So if you accept the Parent Plus loan, your parents have to go into studentaid.gov and complete the credit check application and a master promissory note. So 2 extra steps for the parents there. When you accept student loans, you also have 2 requirements that you have to do at studentaid.gov. One is to sign the master promissory note, and one of the questions that popped up asked, what is the master promissory note? So that's just an agreement saying you understand you're borrowing loans. They have to be paid back, and you're promising to pay them back after you graduate or drop below 6 credits. So that has to be signed in order for your loans to disperse. The other requirement is you have to complete entrance counseling. This is, again, studentaid.gov. And entrance counseling is just a short tutorial, maybe take you 20 minutes or so to go through making sure you understand how interest accrues on your loans, what repayment looks like on that. So those are the two requirements for receiving federal student loans. So I'm going to go through some of the other questions that came in. Do any of the federal loans accrue interest during the school year? So I just kind of answered that. Subsidized does not accrue interest, but unsubsidized does. Currently, just as a side note, because of the CARES Act, none of the student loans are accruing interest until after the end of September. Whether or not that will be continued, I'm not sure. But so nothing will accrue interest until October 1st at this point. But then unsubsidized does accrue interest. My parents are not able to take the Parent Plus loan. What would be an alternative? So a couple options here. If your parent does not have credit, that good enough credit to pass their credit check, they log into studentaid.gov, do their credit application, and they are denied. They have a couple options. They can either get an endorser for that loan, or they can appeal that decision. The other thing, if they accept the denied application, you'll be awarded additional $4,000 in unsubsidized loan. So that's $4,000 more in the student's name. The other option would be if they have good credit and they just are not wanting to take on that debt at this point in their life, they may consider co-signing a private loan for you. And so there's lots of lenders that lend educational loans to parents and students. If you go to our website, there's a link on the financial aid page. It says loans-private, and we have a couple loan borrower comparison tools on that webpage that you can kind of look at different private loan options as well. Private loans do require a co-signer, so it doesn't have to be a parent. It can be anybody that has good credit. So that would be another option for you as well. We encourage you to do your research when you're looking at private loans. Generally, federal loans are going to give you better rates. Currently, the federal interest rate is 2.75%, likely to change for next year. It's hard to find those same terms in the private sector. So certainly do your research on those loans. So that would be one option for you. You could also do a payment plan if your parents are able to help make payments. Student accounts will work with you and divide the balance of your bill over 4 months. So that would be an option for you as well. My parents cannot take the Parent Plus loan. Can I get additional grants and scholarships? So no additional grants. We talked about you can get additional loans, and additional scholarships wouldn't come from MSU for that scenario, but you could certainly do the legwork and apply for scholarships outside of MSU. Let's see, we kind of talked about the different types of loans. Is it possible to get a student loan through the college? No, we're not lenders at the college. We simply facilitate the disbursement of federal and private loans through our office. So we're not lenders. We just kind of the middleman. The funds come to us and we pass them on to you. So we do not lend student loans for helping with tuition. We do, however, have what's called the Bobcat Bridge loan. It's not to help pay your tuition, but if you should have, it's an emergency fund. If you should have kind of a short-term need, your car breaks down and that's your transportation to and from school. You just need help getting by till your next paycheck or your first paycheck, things like that. Just kind of help bridge a gap in your finances. But we don't have loans for tuition. Also talking about master promissory note and entrance counseling, where you can see this on your My Info. If you log into My Info under the financial aid tab, click on the My Eligibility link, and that will take you to any unsatisfied requirements, because oftentimes we are required to collect other documentation from you before we can award your financial aid. So get in the habit of checking that, also checking your emails, because we send a lot of communication to you via email for things we need in order to get your financial aid in place. One of the other questions was, what is the deadline for completing the requirements? Your aid's not going to disperse until you complete the requirement. So I'd say the sooner the better. You can do the entrance counseling and master promissory note at any time. If you don't see them clear on your account, you'll see them shortly. Certainly by early or mid-July, you'll see those requirements cleared. So if you go out and do them, know you've done them, and you'll be set for the fall disbursement. James, that was all of our loan questions. Anything else I missed that I should cover on that?
No, we will supplement really just a little bit by saying, you know, MSU does its best with the resources that we have. We prioritized any of that gift aid first. So that Pell Grant, any other scholarships that you have, that is what we want to do for you. That is certainly our priority to give that to you, providing the eligibility elements are all met. That's our piece that goes with that. Loans are a part of that package, almost without fail, that you will see part of that in that award offer. And it's not because we want to do that, it's because that is just the option that's available for us to give to you. Montana students in particular, over time that I've been here, and MSU students even more in particular over time, have been resourceful. And the student debt that a Montana State student comes out with is reasonable statewide, and it's certainly reasonable nationwide in terms of Montana students being able to navigate how much of that loan they want to take. And that, I think, speaks quite a bit to, one, who you are, two, to certainly us trying to get this knowledge to you, and into a financial education office that we have on campus that will help you understand and prepare for that repayment period as it comes after school. So a lot of times it's not just borrowing, it's being conscientious about how much you're borrowing and how that plays into your workload, how that plays into, I mean, your academic workload, and then how much you're able to work and do some other things. So the college is an investment, and you have to balance that with all these different factors in terms of what goes there, knowing that there's a reward to that investment down the road, and you'll reap some benefits from it, that looks like. So congratulations to really to Montana generally, because the amount of debt that students come out with in Montana is lower than the national average. So the tuition rates are already low. You can get by without borrowing full amounts of all the loans to be able to get through. Again, as we made that offer to you, it's because we can. Doesn't mean you have to take everything that's there. Be smart and be wise about what you borrow. Only borrow what you need, I think, is kind of the place you want to go with there. So it's all about balance, and it's all about trying to create that package that works best for you. We'll try to wrap up here. I know we're pushing up here on the hour, and try to let that go. A couple other items real quick. I saw the one question about Hillman and Horatio. Alger's, congratulations on the Horatio Alger Award. That probably, as you mentioned, that came specifically from them. And the answer to the question, Jacob, is it kind of depends. MSU does have a relationship with Horatio Alger, and so you can be a Hillman student as a standalone, you can be a Horatio student as a standalone, and you can also have a combination of both, because Horatio is also supplementing some of the Hillman Scholars or some other aid. So there's just a blend there. There's not an easy answer to that question. It's great that you have one, and because of that, and depending on what that is or how much that is, there may be something at play there. But if you were expecting a Hillman aspect to what that looks like, I encourage you to go to that Hillman webpage at MSU, look at that contact information out the bottom, and reach out to the Hillman Scholars Program and just inquire about your eligibility for the Hillman Scholars Program, and let them know in that inquiry that you actually also already have the Horatio Alger Scholarship. But that's great. Congratulations on that.
James, I'm going to jump in for a second. A question just popped up. Is there a place we can go to track all of our school tuition and room and board payments? The answer is yes. On your MyInfo account, there's an electronic billing and payment link, and that will show you your bill. You can also sign up your parents to be authorized payers. They'll get a statement. You can always view your current charges on your MyInfo account. That's going to be the most up to date. The statement that goes to your parents goes out once a month, so it's not going to be exactly current if you're adding or dropping classes. But yes, on your MyInfo account, under electronic billing and payment, you would be able to see your complete bill and how much aid has applied towards your bill and how much payments you've made towards your bill.
Thanks, Barb. Wrap up, we'll just kind of address, there's a couple questions really just about, struggling to find help for college or do whatever that is. We hope that this has kind of helped articulate a little bit about what that flow looks like. The FAFSA is really a mandatory piece in terms of trying to identify what help is available for you and to give you the best kind of information we can to help you make those decisions moving forward. There's a question or two that kind of came in too that just talked about that stress. It is stressful, no question. And we are here, and I don't know, Lauren, if you can put up that contact slide now. But that is what we're here for. We're here to help you navigate some of that stress. We're here to help you navigate what some of those questions are and what those challenges might be, and to give you that best information that we can help you feel better about what that looks like. I'm not promising you that we can give you all the gift and free aid that we would love to give you. We don't have it, but we can help you kind of manage that situation and find a way that at least hopefully puts some peace into that decision-making process. So, but it is that investment. You're looking at a 4-year investment here to prepare you for that next great opportunity out there where you get to realize some of that professional ambition, get to put that ambition into work, and then kind of get what that looks like. And to do that, sometimes that takes a little bit of student loan debt in combination with what you have. But again, I've worked at several schools, but in Montana State is certainly, to me, the best school in terms of preparing you to help you navigate that with our financial education office and with the preparation that we can try to give you, and really just with borrow only what you need. You got to kind of stick to that mantra. Barb didn't really talk about student loans, but say you only borrowed $1,000 up front because you thought that's what you would need. You have work obligation, otherwise you found a job, and you're meeting expenses otherwise. But say something happens there, no problem. If you already got $1,000, it's easy to up that to another 500 or 1,000 up to that maximum eligibility throughout the school year. So you can piece that together. But that also becomes with just planning and being responsible, right? So if you borrow a certain amount and you get that refund in August or September, that money has to be budgeted for the rest of the term. So it becomes obligation on your part to use that refund wisely in terms of meeting your expenses throughout the rest of the term and until that spring refund comes back around and also puts you in that situation. So there's a growth and maturity element in that in terms of just kind of navigating what that flow looks like. So that's kind of there.
James, can I jump in with a
Please.
Can I jump in with a FERPA plug?
Oh, yep.
As James is talking about the confusing and learning about financial aid, we certainly encourage you to let your parents help guide you through the complications of financial aid and paying for college. However, once you turn 18, we're not allowed to give your parents any information unless you sign an authorization form. It's called a FERPA. You can find it on our website under forms. It's authorization to release private information. So even if your parents is paying your bill for you, we can't tell them how much the bill is without you giving us permission to talk to them. So it's one form. It's shared between us and student accounts. We can only discuss financial information. Certainly encourage you to go online, complete that form, and submit it to our office so that we can talk to your parents and they can help you navigate the financial aid and paying your bill.
Great, thank you. Great plug at the end. It's a low impact way to make sure that we can give you the best information that we can. We will talk around any generality that we can without getting specific with any kind of phone call, but in order to get down to kind of the bare nuts and bolts of it, sometimes we need that FERPA form to be able to really talk ideally about your situation. So we can go a long way without it, but we can go a little bit further with it. So please do that FERPA form so that we can kind of handle this and navigate it the best way. Lauren, with that, I'm going to call it good and turn it back over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much First of all, I want to say thank you to all the students for joining. It looks like you all were chatting in great questions, and I hope you found this beneficial and helpful, just kind of guiding those last few steps and kind of helping better understand how to finance your education. As I mentioned, we do have that contact information on the screen, so if you want to just snap a photo of this slide, I'd highly recommend doing that. Also, just know we will have a recording of this being sent out, and it will also be on our website, so you can always refer back to it with any other kind of last minute questions, or maybe you forgot a step or forgot to write down a quick little comment that was made. Make sure you're referring back to that video. I do also want to thank our great presenters, James and Barb. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you so much for sharing this information and answering those questions. I know just for myself, as well as some of our coworkers, we found it very helpful and very informative. So thank you so much. There is a huge appreciation just going out to the two of you. Other than that, I am going to wrap it up. So thank you all and have a great rest of your night.